I never imagined a simple act of desperation would lead to a heartbreaking sacrifice. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The midday sun beat down, blinding and merciless, as if it were mocking me. I stood in front of that old, gray building, heart thumping wildly. The air felt thick, almost electric, charged with an anxious energy that I couldn't shake off. Inside, I was met by hushed whispers and tear-streaked faces. I glanced at my mother, her eyes red and swollen, as she clutched my baby sister tightly against her chest. The tiny thing felt like a fragile bird, shivering against the weight of the world. I wanted to scream, to shake some sense into everyone around me, but my timidity held me back. The walls seemed to close in, suffocating me in their worn-out embrace. Only days before, life had been normal, filled with laughter and the sweet smell of my father's cooking wafting from the kitchen. But now, the world had transitioned into a nightmare. A single phone call had shattered everything. My father gone. Just like that, snatched away into the darkness, leaving us stranded in despair. As I walked the cold, sterile halls, echoes of my heartbeat rang louder than my footsteps. I spotted a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye, a nurse, her expression a mix of exhaustion and sympathy. She offered a faint smile that crumpled beneath the weight of the unspoken. I felt her sorrow seep into my bones, a reminder that we were not alone in our grief, yet it only deepened my own. Those moments stretched on forever. The clock ticked relentlessly, each second a reminder of more time lost. I could feel the need for something to change, something to break through the despair. Desperation began to twist inside me like a storm. What could I do? My hands trembled as I fought the instinct to hide from it all. Then I remembered the old reported rumors. Me father always chuckled them off, but whispers among the family told stories of a hidden treasure, something that could solve all our problems. But at what cost? I was consumed with longing, an uncontainable urge that collided with a deep-seated fear. What if it existed? Just as I was about to take the first step into the unknown, I heard a loud crash outside, a shattering glass sound that froze me in place. My heart raced, panic flooding my veins. I rushed to the window and looked down to the street below. A figure lay crumpled on the ground, a chaotic blur of red and blue flashing lights around them. There it was, my moment of reckoning. Who was that? What had happened? What if this was all a sign? I stood there, torn between fear and hope, adrenaline coursing through my body. The ache in my chest grew sharper. My father's words echoed in my mind. A single choice can change the course of your life. It felt like I was standing at the edge of a precipice, ready to leap into the unknown. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The glow from the streetlights flickered, illuminating the chaos that ensued below. I leaned closer to the window, peering down at the figure as if I could somehow understand the situation. A man lay sprawled awkwardly on the asphalt, his body contorted in a way that seemed unnatural. The distant wails of sirens echoed through the air, piercing my thoughts. My mother called to me softly, her voice trembling, pulling me back into the suffocating reality of the hospital. "Please, come away from the window, honey." Her voice was heavy with fear and concern, but it didn't erase the urgency pulsing in my veins. I was engulfed in a whirlwind of emotions, a mix of dread and an inexplicable yearning for action. Would the chaos outside offer some sort of hope, a chance to fill the void my father left behind? Finally, I backed away from the window, my heart still racing. "I think someone has been hurt downstairs," I murmured, feeling the weight of my own helplessness. My mother turned pale, her hand tightening around my sister, who squeaked softly, sensing the tension. "It's probably just an accident," she said softly, though I could see the tremor in her lips. I wanted to comfort her, to promise her I would keep everyone safe. But I was only a child, a fragile bird like my sister, trapped in a storm. What if I hesitated? the thought crystallizing with clarity. What if it's connected to the dad? The words hung between us like smoke. I had once sworn to my father that I would find a way to make things right for our family. Air suddenly felt heavier. My mother's eyes darkened, a wall of worry encasing her heart. "Don't say that," she whispered. "You mustn't think like that." But the fear in her eyes echoed the doubt swirling in my mind. What if this was all part of something larger? What if this was the universe's cruel joke, pushing me to the edge? The crash sounded again, louder this time, a dull thump that reverberated down the hallway. I felt drawn to that sound, as if it was calling to me, a lighthouse guiding me through the tempest of my emotions. I glanced toward the hospital's entrance and felt the tightness in my chest loosen just a fraction, replaced by curiosity and an intensity one couldn't quell. That I slipped out of the room, gently tugging the curtain closed so as not to disturb my mother and sister. My heart pounded against my ribcage like a trapped bird. As I moved toward the exit, I felt a hand grab my arm, firm yet steady. "Where do you think you're going?" It was the same nurse from earlier, her face drawn but illuminating a flicker of kindness. "Just to see what happened outside," I responded, my voice barely above a whisper. "But it's dangerous out there." "You shouldn't go alone," she said, her eyes softening. She sighed and scanned the hallway, deliberating. "All right, if you must, I'll go with you. But stay close." The nurse Rachel wasn't imposing, and her presence felt like a brief shield against the cold reality that awaited. Together, we stepped outside, the night air hitting us with a chill that nipped at my skin. The scene was chaotic. Paramedics bustled about, their shouts mingling with the grumbling crowd that had gathered, eyes wide and mouths agape. My heart sank as I realized the figure on the ground was a man covered in crimson patches, a victim of an accident yet to be fully understood. Panic coursed through my blood, my thoughts racing. I hadn't prepared for this, hadn't thought about the consequences of my uncontainable curiosity. What if this man had been connected to the unanswered questions about my father? What if just then, the man stirred, groaning and trying to push himself up, and my breath caught in my throat? Could it be? "Stay here." Rachel stepped forward, her firm voice breaking through my dazed thoughts. "We'll see what we can do." I watched her kneel beside him, her caring nature reflecting in her gentle movements. I felt a tug in my chest, a deep-seated desire to join them, to yell out and demand answers, but my fear rooted me in place. As I stood frozen, the minutes dragged on painfully, stretching endlessly. And just as Rachel began speaking with the man, his eyes fluttered open, their gazes locked. I held my breath, willing him to say something, anything. But when he finally spoke, it was not what I expected. "Help me," he rasped, the words spilling from his lips like an intricate secret, leaving me hanging on its edge. All at once, the world around me sharped into focus. My heart raced wildly, every beat echoing the weight of unresolved grief and the promise I had made. The echoes of my father's investment in the unknown tightened around my throat. They weren't just whispers of treasure. They were the shadows of hope I had locked away. Could this moment, this man, lead me somewhere I had dared not tread? And then, Rachel turned her head slightly, capturing my gaze. There was something in her eyes, an understanding, or maybe a warning. I didn't know, but I felt it like a pulse. As I stood there, heart pounding, the gravity of that simple plea stirred something deep within me, awakening a quest that would demand I confront the truths I had been so desperate to ignore. Before I could process it all, a police officer pushed through the crowd, barking orders as he scanned for witnesses. And it was in that chaotic moment, standing on the precipice of fate, that I made my choice. The unknown was calling, and it felt like the only path left for salvation, no matter the cost. The cold air hung thick with anticipation, hovering over me like an unwelcome shroud. Each breath I took felt heavier, laden with the weight of possibilities, and the flickering lights from the ambulance illuminated the faces in the crowd, each one a reflection of my own fear and yearning for answers. Rachel's voice broke through the haze as she leaned closer to the man, her brow furrowing with concern. "Can you tell me your name?" she asked gently, coaxing him with her warmth. But the man's eyes flickered past her to the ongoing chaos, a hint of desperation lurking in his weary gaze. "Please, you have to help me. I can't do this alone," he gasped, his voice cracking under the pressure of his own urgency. The plea resonated through my very core, a haunting echo of my own silent cries for understanding. I felt a primal instinct surge within me, the need to step forward, to be part of something bigger than the suffocating walls that surrounded my family. Something that could lead to the truth about my father and why he had to leave. "Rachel," I called out, my voice shaky yet resolute. "I want to help him." She turned her head, her eyes wide with surprise. "You shouldn't. I have to. Don't you see?" I interrupted, gesturing toward the man who was fighting for his life, as if to tug the invisible thread that connected us. "What if he knows something? Something about my dad?" Rachel hesitated, torn. The lines of responsibility were etched deep around her eyes, but I could see the glimmer of recognition that mirrored my own urgency. With a resigned sigh, she stepped aside, allowing me to edge closer. I crouched near the man, who now stared at me with a mixture of confusion and hope flickering in his dilated pupils. "Hey, it's okay. Just stay with me. Can you tell me your name?" I asked gently, feeling the warmth of serendipity brushing against my fingertips. His gaze shifted back toward the chaos, the sirens blaring in the distance, before he finally nodded slightly, taking a soft, ragged breath. "Mike," he whispered, his voice trembling as if the sound itself was a fragile relic of his humanity. "Please, I need to tell you something." At that moment, the world around us closed in, blurring into a dilation of sound and light, but everything else melted away. It was just Mike and me, a tapestry of untold stories weaving between us. Rachel quickly knelt beside me, her experience a solid anchor against the swirling chaos. "Breathe, Mike. Just breathe," she reassured, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Take your time." But before Mike could muster his thoughts, the voice of an officer snapped us back. "You there? Stand back. We need to clear the area." His stern shout resonated through the crowd, threatening to tear apart this fragile moment. "No," I cried out in response, indignation spilling from me. "He needs help. He's trying to tell us something important." The officer's unwavering gaze intensified, observing what he clearly perceived as a child stepping too close to danger. "This isn't a safe place for you," he warned. In that instant, the man I crouched beside seemed to sag further into the pavement, one last vestige of strength wavering as he locked eyes with Mergent, pleading. "You don't understand. You have to remember your father. He was meant to know." My heart dropped, the connection so palpable that I almost felt the world tilting dangerously off its axis. "What did you say?" I barely managed to get the words out, my voice trembling with dawning realization as his consciousness flickered like the streetlights above us. "Your father, he was searching for me. He knew something about," but before he could finish, a jolt of fear swept through him, his body convulsing as more paramedics rushed in, shoving me gently away. "Back up. We need space." The clang of metal filled the air as chaos rumbled through the crowd, pushing me further from the revelation I so desperately needed. Rachel pulled me aside, her grip tight and grounding. "We have to let them work," she urged softly, her voice a quiet fire in the storm. But I could feel every fiber of my being screaming to reconnect. What was he about to disclose? As the frenzy of medical personnel enveloped Mike, I grasped Rachel's arm, desperation welling up. What if he knows why my father left? What if he has answers? With a pained frown, Rachel replied, "I promise, if he makes it through this, we'll find a way to get those answers. But right now, your safety is the priority." In that moment, something deep within me ignited, a flicker of flame that refused to be extinguished. I took a step back, torn between worry and hope. The air crackled with charged energy, the unknown stretching ahead like a chasm I was terrified yet compelled to leap into. But just as I turned to find a path closer to the chaos, I noticed something falling from Mike's pocket, a small blue notebook, fluttering to the ground like a wounded bird. "Rachel," I called, pointing urgently. "The notebook." Before I could rush forward, a thunderous silence swelled, and the crowd instinctively parted. A figure emerged from the shadows, an officer, towering and resolute, his jaw clenched, eyes cold with authority. "Step away from the scene, kid," he barked, glancing between me and the crumpled notebook still lying in the street like a forgotten promise. And as panic coursed through me anew, I realized this moment was slipping from my grasp, the answers tantalizingly close yet just out of reach. I felt the world shift beneath my feet, upheaval and uncertainty squeezing the life from the fragile hope I had found. I knew then that everything hinged on the outcome of this night, fraught with heartbreak and sacrifice, the gravity of my choices weighing heavier than ever before. The adrenaline still pulsing in my veins, I felt rooted to the ground as the officer stood imposingly between me and the notebook. The sirens faded into a low hum, and time stretched into a thick, suffocating pause. All I could think about was how close I had come to uncovering something that could shatter the carefully constructed barriers surrounding my family's past. "Please, just let me," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. The words felt like venom against my tongue. "I don't know if he's going to make it, and I need to know." The officer glared at me, his eyes unyielding as he shook his head slightly. "Kid, this isn't a game. You need to step back." Behind him, I could see Mike's body being surrounded by frantic paramedics, their movements hurried but measured. The urge to charge forward, to reclaim that small token of possibility, gnawed at my insides, threatening to spill over. Rachel stepped forward, her voice steady and persuasive. "Officer, please, give her a moment. That notebook could mean something, could hold something that answers a question no one else can." Her words pierced through the chaos, and for a moment, the officer's gaze faltered. But only momentarily, resolve hardened back into his stance. "We don't have time for this," he snapped, shifting to escort Rachel and me away. But I wouldn't be swayed. In an act of desperation, I dove forward, darting to the ground where the notebook lay abandoned, its edges crinkled and worn. I snatched it up, cradling the fragile pages in my hands as if they were the lifeblood I'd been seeking. The officer wheeled around, shock flickering across his features. "Hey, I told you," but I was already backing away, flipping the notebook open despite the chaos around me. The pages were filled with frantic, swirl-like handwriting names, dates, and fragmented thoughts laid out before me like a riddle begging for resolution. I scanned the words, each one catching in my throat until I stumbled upon a particular passage, one that struck a haunting chord. "The truth lies in the forgotten places. I must find him before it's too late." Before I could digest the entire passage, Rachel's hand on my shoulder jolted me back to reality. "We need to get out of here. Now." I swallowed hard, the urgency in her tone breaking through my reverie. The notebook felt heavy in my hands, the contents now a weighty promise that could shift the very foundation of my life. "What if Mike has answers about my father?" I asked, the words tumbling out in a rush of worry and frustration. "What if hey no, but if we don't get you to safety first, we might lose our chance." Her voice softened, brimming with concern as she glanced back toward the paramedics. "Let's find a safe place to look at that. We need to decipher this before it all spirals beyond our control." Reluctantly, I nodded, glancing one last time at the scene. Mike was being wheeled into the ambulance, his form limp and unresponsive, a painful reminder of the life-and-death struggle that adversity can bring. As the doors slammed shut, injecting an echoing finality into the air, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach. The officer turned his attention back to the scene, oblivious to the fraying edges of our existence. Around us, the crowd began to disperse, their faces still haunted from the night's turmoil. But all I could focus on was the notebook, the secrets it held, the truth it potentially contained, and the perilous journey that lay ahead of us. "Come on," Rachel urged, gently guiding me toward a quieter corner amidst the chaos. My heart raced as I held the notebook tightly in my grip, half expecting it to slip from my fingers like a fleeting dream. As we stepped into a dimly lit alley, the weight of the evening settled heavily on my shoulders. With trembling hands, I flipped the pages, seeking clarity in the jagged thoughts. It was a jumble, disjointed names, poorly drawn maps, an address circled multiple times. The single name stood out among the lines: Eleanor Wright. The moment I read it, a chill dashed through me. My father had mentioned her once, a fleeting reference caught in a whirl of hushed conversations that my mother had promptly shut down. I hadn't thought much of it then, but now it bloomed with significance, the scent of urgency growing stronger. "Oh, you know this person?" Rachel asked tentatively. "It may be. I think my dad knew her, or someone connected to our family did," I replied, my heart racing. "But I don't understand what it has to do with Mike, or why my father left." Before Rachel could respond, a wave of sirens erupted anew, pulling our attention back toward the commotion. Shadows closed in as figures emerged from the void, a pair of determined officers moving purposefully toward our alley. "Quick, hide," Rachel hissed, darting behind a stack of crates. I stumbled after her, clutching the notebook to my chest, a talisman against the encroaching darkness. But it was too late. As we crouched in silence, a familiar silhouette flashed past the alley opening. "Mom." My breath caught in my throat. My mother stood rigid, scanning the crowd with wide, fearful eyes, her expression flickering between determination and dread. She was searching for me, and I felt the ground beneath me shift once again, heavy with the implications of her presence. I had never imagined this simple act of finding a notebook could lead my world into deeper shadows, as if secrets long buried were on the verge of resurfacing. "Please, not now," I whispered to myself, the weight of my choices swelling like a tide ready to crash. Would I have to face her with everything I had uncovered? Or would I bury it to protect her? My heart hammered in my chest, uncertainty flooding my veins as horror and hope battled violently within me. What had begun as a pursuit of truth had morphed into a treacherous crossroads, and I sensed we were teetering precariously on the brink of a revelation that could irrevocably change the trajectory of our lives. The alley dimmed around me, a cloak of darkness that felt all too familiar. I could see my mother's silhouette dancing in the flickering light from the street, her body taut with the weight of what was unspoken. Just moments ago, I had grasped onto a thread of hope, a chance to unravel the twisted mystery of my family. But now, the very fabric of that hope felt as precarious as the pages of the notebook nestled against my heart. "Oh, you think she knows?" Rachel whispered, her eyes darting toward the opening, her anxiety palpable. "I don't know," I breathed, careful to keep my voice low, tinged with disbelief. My mother had always been the one to shield me from the shadows of our past, and now, here she was, a living embodiment of the very secrets I was desperate to unveil. As the officers moved closer, their voices carried toward us, drowning out the chaotic symphony of the night. "She could be in danger. We can't let her keep wandering," an officer said, and my heart sank at his words. They were looking for me. They had seen me at the scene with Mike, seen my desperation, my reckless pursuit of truth. What if they get her involved? Rachel murmured, fear etching into her features. "Then we need to leave. Now," I said, urgency igniting a fire within me. I couldn't allow my mother to be caught in this web of revelation that I was weaving, possibilities that could crush her. But as I turned to retreat deeper into the alley, her voice rang out the soft, broken sound that could slice through the air. "Claire." I froze, the weight of my mom's call crashing into me like a thunderclap. Her tone held that undertone of fear, the kind that consumed a child's deepest thoughts during stormy nights. The past whispered its secrets once again, and for one gut-wrenching moment, everything inside me screamed to face her, to share my burgeoning fears, to demand explanations. "No, you can't. She'll want you to come out," Rachel pressed, her grip tightening on my arm. "Let me go," I whispered, the internal fight battling within me. Courage bled into my resolve. There was no more hiding. Every tick of fate pushed me closer to unveiling the truth. If only I could face the source of my deepest fears. "I can't leave her out there, not now." Taking a deep breath, I stepped out from behind the crates, the notebook clutched protectively against my chest. My mother's face morphed from worry to relief, a fleeting glimpse that shattered my resolve. "Claire." "I was so scared," she said, rushing toward me, arms open wide, pulling me into a cocoon of warmth that felt entirely out of place in the chaos of the night. Suddenly, I was a child again, seeking comfort from a storm. But I was older now. I was teetering on the precipice of wisdom, an echo of my father's subdued presence in my life. I couldn't reconcile that warmth with the icy grip of secrets hidden away in the pages I now held. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you," I began, my voice barely rising above a whisper, unable to shake the solemnity that surrounded us. But before I could muster the words, another unfamiliar voice interrupted. "Ma'am, are you okay?" One of the officers asked in a drawn tone, his concern shifting directly to us. My mother straightened, a stark change in her demeanor as the officer's presence clouded her relief with urgency. "I'm fine," she insisted, her voice carrying an edge of defiance, a fierce protective nature holding me as a barrier against the unknown threats closing in. Your daughter was seen at the scene of the incident involving Mike Branson. We need to ensure she is safe, the officer replied, eyes narrowing as he studied us. My heart stuttered, a rush of panic surging through me as I glanced toward Rachel, who was now steeling her resolve just within earshot. Mom, but she cut me off, flinging her arm around my shoulder, pulling me tightly against her side. I want to know why you've been out here. We need to go home now. The voice inside me screamed against her decision. But what could I say about the notebook, about the fragments of my identity I had just begun to grasp? I can't go yet, I said, voice trembling. I have to find out what this means. A heavy silence charged the air between us. My mother's expression varied wildly, confusion creased her brow. Genuine fear flickered in her eyes, and beneath it all, a memory of something long past caught in the folds of her being. Claire, please listen, she pressed, her voice softening as she shifted closer. I know you're searching for answers, but there are some things we're not meant to understand, some things you are better off without. But why? The question burst forth, desperate for validation. Why can't I know the truth, Mom? Why can't you just tell me? Before I could blink, the notebook slipped from my fingers, falling silently to the concrete at our feet. The sudden stillness shattered the frantic noise around me, leaving the world suspended in time. In that moment, my mother knelt to retrieve it, her movements fluid, but when her eyes met mine, they were swirling with another tempest of anguish. No, Claire, you can't, she gasped, the realization dawning on her. The officers barely flinched as she snatched it up, reverence laced with fear flooding her features. You have no idea what you're inviting in, she warned, clutching it as if it were a live grenade, a deadly artifact of our shared past. Just then, a scream ripped through the night, a shattering sound that sent a ripple of fear through the crowd. Claire, Rachel, my heart raced as I shot a glance back toward the street, where shadows rushed in. The officers, tense and responsive, stood as guards, but I already felt the shifting undercurrent, the tug of roots I had yet to understand. Mom, what is happening? Her grip on the notebook tightened almost imperceptibly, and a flicker of regret crossed her features. You need to trust me. You need to run now, before it's too late. The urge to flee warred against my desire to stay. But I saw the urgency in her eyes, the arrival of something unnameable growing closer, and I felt my stomach drop as the world blurred around me. Go, she cried, shoving the notebook toward me. Don't look back. The air crackled with tension, my heart pounding as I tore away from the alley, the world distantly receding into what felt like a horror movie I couldn't escape. Behind me, shadows engulfed my mother, a whirlwind of decisions spiraling as my instinct forced me forward, pulled me out of the moment that could drastically alter everything. The streetlights flickered ominously, promising shadows to chase me, promising answers laced with heartbreak. I had never imagined that a simple act of desperation would lead to a breaking of bonds, yet here I was, teetering at the edge of revelation and perilous loss, wondering if I could ever piece it all together before it shattered completely. As I sprinted away from the alley, the world blurred into a cacophony of sounds and shadowy figures. Each breath felt like a betrayal of the moment I had just fled, while an overwhelming sense of dread coiled itself tightly around my heart. My mother's face, etched with fear and urgency, haunted the corners of my mind, reminding me that secrets bore a heavy price and she was willing to pay it in my place. That I stumbled into the heart of the city, neon lights flashing and voices blending into an unintelligible hum, an ocean of moving bodies that seemed oblivious to my rushing grief. I felt disoriented, unmoored in a reality where comfort once resided. The notebook, that lifeline to my past, felt like both a weight and a salvation in my hands. Each page held promises of knowledge and understanding, but my mother's warning echoed ominously. You have no idea what you're inviting in. I darted into a small cafe, more for refuge than hunger, and collapsed into a booth at the back, seeking a moment, just a memento breathe. The air was thick with the scent of rich coffee, mingling with traces of sugar and warmth that momentarily shielded me from the storm brewing outside. I opened the notebook, thoughts swirling around my mind like dense fog pressing too close, and began to sift through its pages, scanning hurriedly for anything that could elucidate my mother's reaction. Family trees, names littered with scribbles, drawings sealed with a sense of nostalgia that clawed at my heart. I traced my fingers across the ink, unraveling stories trapped in time, when suddenly, a name struck me like lightning. Amelia. It was written in elegant, looping handwriting, an almost lyrical quality that vibrated through me. How did I not remember this name? I had seen it somewhere before, etched alongside others, tales of connection now twinkling within my hopelessness. But before I could find clarity, a familiar face loomed over me. It was Rachel. Her worry cracked the surface of my frenetic circling thoughts. What happened back there? She gasped, her expression a canvas of concern. They're looking for me. Shesh is in danger, Rachel. She warned me. I couldn't hold the trembling in my voice, the guilt clinging tightly to my soul, refusing to let go. That we have to go back, she urged, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. If they find her, no. I cut in sharply, the force of my denial surprising even myself. I can't put her at risk. Not for my unearthing of dusty secrets. The rift between knowing and care felt as jagged as glass. Rachel's eyes narrowed, a flash of irritation cutting through her fear. You deserve to know, Claire. It's not just her burden to carry. This is your life too. Taking a shaky breath, I dropped my gaze to the notebook, allowing the pages to pulse with unfulfilled potential beneath my fingertips. What if I uncover something dark? Something that changes how I see everything? Then maybe it's worth it, she replied softly, the tension in her voice easing slightly. You can't keep running from the truth. Just think of how much you've already lost by not knowing. Her words wrapped around my mind in murmurs, like the whispered promises of the life I yearned for: understanding, connection, belonging. But what if those desires paved the way for even greater pain? Then suddenly, an unfamiliar warmth spread from the table, drawing my attention to the window of the cafe. A figure stood outside, their face obscured by shadow, but the familiar outline cut across my anxiety. It was Mike, a fleeting figure amidst the passing crowd, panic radiating from every move he made. He looked frayed at the edges, a specter of the boy from before, the night of adrenaline and confessions flashing through my mind like a storm. Claire, he shouted, urgency seeping into the desperation of his voice. You need to come with Minnow. Fear pinched my stomach as I glanced at Rachel, who remained frozen in place, her eyes darting between me and Mike. What's happening? She asked, voice trembling. I don't know, I replied, swallowing hard against the knot forming in my throat. But he shouldn't be involved in this. Yet the unmistakable call of unresolved mysteries tugged at me, urging me to rise from the booth, a call laced in both danger and a desire for answers. My pulse quickened unexpectedly, a reckless instinct to leap into the unknown forging through the void of uncertainty gnawing at my being. Rachel's hand tightened around my wrist. This isn't just about you anymore. If they're coming for you, then we have to face this together. But as I stood to confront my past, forces from the shadows converged, dark clouds of fate coiling around our paths. Thrusting the notebook back into my bag, I nodded, making a decision I felt was both right and foolhardy. I am coming, I said, steeling myself to confront whatever awaited in the wake of my decisions. In unison, we dashed out of the cafe, retracing the familiar path to uncertainty, aware that with every step, the line between safety and a heartbreaking sacrifice blurred further into a haze, catching us in a spiraling storm of revelations, each more daunting than the last. But before we reached Mike, a scream pierced the night again, this time clearer and filled with panic, turning my heart to stone. Help! Somebody help me! It was an unmistakably female voice, and I faltered, dread sticking in my throat as reality set in. My eyes widened, recognizing that scream, a call that shattered the silence like glass breaking, reverberating into the unknown, and it all clicked into place with sharp terror. Rachel, it's her, I choked out, the truth crashing over me like an unforgiving wave. And that cry led us deeper into the heart of chaos, the chilling realization that the clock had begun to tick down, and whatever sacrifice awaited, it might not only change me, but fracture everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family forever. I stumbled after Mike, my heart pounding in my chest, a steady drumbeat of panic echoing in rhythm with the urgent cries that clawed at my senses. It's her, I half whispered, half screamed to Rachel, my feet instinctively pressing harder against the pavement, the world around me blurring into a frantic rush of color and light. Rachel's grip on my wrist tightened imperceptibly, her own fear palpable as she trailed closely behind. "Just keep running," she urged, determination weaving through her terror. Yet with every hurried step, uncertainty whispered bitter doubts into my ears. What awaited us at the source of that scream? What darkness had emerged toward the surface, illuminated against the stark night? We rounded the corner, and through the haze of neon lights, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure lying sprawled on the ground, shadows dancing around her. My breath hitched, an icy dread washing over me as I realized it was Amelia. The name that had ignited such a relentless storm inside me only moments ago now materialized as a terrifying reality. She was the lifeline I had somehow lost along with my bearings. "Amelia," I cried out, desperation threading through every syllable like a lifeline cast into turbulent seas. I pushed through the gathered crowd, my world narrowing to the fragile girl caught in the eye of a sinister storm. Mike was already kneeling beside her, his hands trembling as he cradled her head, murmuring soft reassurances I couldn't hear over the din of chaos flooding the streets. I could see the dark mark on her arm, a trait of despair made palpable through bruised skin, nestled against the backdrop of her ashen face. "What happened?" I gasped, heart racing as dread slithered through my insides, squeezing and trembling in rhythm with my shaky breaths. "Who did this?" Amelia's gaze flickered toward me, the fear in her eyes a reflection of my own impending dread. "Claire, they're coming for you. They're coming for us," she rasped, voice cracking like fragile glass. My stomach twisted. The weight of her fear ignited something in me that threatened to tear me apart. "What do you mean?" I stammered, kneeling beside Mike. "They know that you found the notebook," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath, each word quaking with urgency. "They're tracking you, and if they find you, it will be worse than what happened to me." I blinked back tears, fighting the sob rising in my throat. No, I didn't want any of this. I could feel the heat of anger rising within me, mingling with a sorrow that tasted bitter, all too familiar. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me?" Amelia closed her eyes, guilt woven deeply into her features, brushed by tears that threatened to spill from their corners. "I thought I could protect you. I didn't want you to be afraid. I didn't want you to know how deep it all goes." "Protect me?" Curse this twisted idea of protection that only brings pain. A bitter laugh escaped me, sharp and hollow, echoing off the walls of the alley that seemed to crowd in, suffocating. Before Mike could say anything, the shadow of uncertainty slipped past me, a dark presence wheeling through the throng of people, and all at once, my heart plummeted. A flash of Lether, a figure advancing toward us, cold and authoritative. I wasn't sure who it was, but his eyes pierced through the crowd, a predator's gaze tantalizingly locked on our fragile triangle of shared fate. "Claire," he shouted, a voice like steel. "You can't run from this. It's time to face the truth." I glanced at Rachel, her features pale as she pressed closer against me, her presence a shield against overwhelming despair. "Stay back, all of you," Mike barked, pivoting protectively, desperation pouring from his words. "Get away from her," I yelled, instinctively rising to shield Amelia, who looked like she might slip away into a world far removed from my feeble grasp. But what good was my bravado against the encroaching darkness? "Enough," he spoke, stepping forward, a force of nature meeting a storm. His hand reached, a finger pointing toward me, an accusation chiseled from stone. "You've pulled the threads of this tapestry, Claire. It's only a matter of time before it unravels." Confusion and fear bloomed in my chest, but deep within lay an ember of stubborn resistance. "I won't let anyone else suffer for my choices," I shouted defiantly. That a soft stir of hope flickered in Rachel's eyes just as the unmistakable sounds of sirens blared in the distance, promise and horror converging in the tightening air. But the figure before us only smiled, a chilling expression that felt inherently wrong. "The sirens won't save you. They'll only make things worse. You need to make a choice, the truth, or lose everything." A silence fell upon the group as his words hung thick, a cruel paean to my fears, drawing out every secret I had fought to suppress. Before I could form a response, a council of shadows gathered, menacingly watching from the periphery, lean and predatory like wolves anticipating their prey. Claire? Mike's voice surged through the fog, shaky but unwavering. We need to go. Now. I hesitated, my heart pulled in two directions, the palpable threat beckoning my attention, while Amelia's deepening pallor dragged me back to her trembling form. She needed me, and yet, they were here, undeterred and drawing closer like the tide, each wave threatening to sweep away everything I held dear. But inside, a whisper emerged, a sliver of wisdom that pierced through my fears like a needle through fabric. I thought of all I had lost, all I stood to sacrifice if I didn't heed the call of my heart, my family, my fate. Whatever it takes, I will protect you all, I declared, swallowing the burning knot of fear. Yet even as the words left my lips, I felt the weight of my own contradictions. Choices would spill consequences, and I could already hear the distant echoes of their fall. The cloth of our lives was unraveling at the seams, each decision weaving a tapestry of inevitable heartbreak. With a sudden rush, I turned on my heels, grabbing Rachel's hand as we ran away from the looming danger, my heart propelling me forward into the darkness edged with uncertainty. But the cost of a choice weighed heavy as we fled toward the unknown, each breath laced with unease as the shadows danced menacingly behind us. Whispers of truth closing in. Was running toward a precipice of despair, yet utterly unable to stop. And as I looked back one last time, I caught sight of that figure, their smile transforming into a promise of calamity, just as the sirens wailed louder. With each step retreating into the night, dread sank deeper within, a constant pulse reminding me that I had opened Pandora's box, and whatever lay inside beckoned with a call of sacrifice, heartbreak, and the inevitable truth that lurked in the shadows, waiting with bated breath. The pavement melted beneath my feet, the world around us a blur of shifting colors fading into a darker fog. Rachel's hand was a lifeline, steady yet trembling, reminding me that we were still tethered to some semblance of normalcy, a fragile anchor against the chaos that spiraled just out of reach. In the cacophony of an impending storm, there was an urgent need to escape, to find safety, but safety felt like an illusion born from the despair that clawed at the edges of my resolve. We ducked into an alley, shadows twining around us, and for a brief moment, the sounds of pursuit faded. Mike pressed his back against the cold brick wall, his breath heavy and labored. What do we do now? Panic etched into the lines of his face betrayed his bravado. Just think, I hissed, adrenaline still surging through my veins. We need a plan. My voice dripped with urgency, but inside, uncertainty churned a bitter tide. My heart still thrummed with Amelia's last words, their resonance creating an unease that threatened to drown me. Claire, Rachel whispered, breaking into my tumultuous thoughts. We should call the authorities. They can help us. Help? I scoffed bitterly. The word felt hollow in a mouthful of poisoned honey. They're part of it, tangled in the web just as much as we are. We can't trust anyone, not anymore. I held on to anger like a shield, but beneath it all lay a flickering light, the desire to protect them, to find a way out of this nightmare without sacrificing what little we had left. Yet, how could I possibly navigate through the treacherous labyrinth of hidden truths when I was still trapped within my own past? Claire, a soft voice called from the shadows, and the air grew still, as if the universe itself had paused. Amelia was still there, though my mind desperately wished that she wouldn't be. You're not alone in this. You must confront your truth if you want any hope of survival. Confront what? I replied, half hoping she would just fade into the darkness and take the weight of this relentless choice with her. What truth could possibly guide us out of here? To truly save yourself, you must first understand what binds you to them. Follow the trail. Trust the connections you find, even if they test your heart, she said, her eyes alight with a fire that contrasted with her previously ashen pallor. Mike stepped forward, shadows flickering across his face. What do you mean? What trail? Amelia inhaled deeply, a tremor running through her as she steadied herself against the wall. Sometimes the people we think we can't trust are the very ones paving our escape. It's not just about running anymore. Rachel moved closer, her hand instinctively reaching for Amelia's. Her touch seemed to bridge the gap of despair between us. You're in danger, Amelia. Let us help you. We need to get out of here, together. I felt a pang of jealousy shoot through me at the sight of their connection, a bond that felt too pure amidst the mess we were in. My heart conflicted with the impulse to protect Emilia versus the growing need to insist on our escape. Twisting conflict coiling through me, I suddenly realized that remaining divided would only further fracture our chances at survival. If we're going to get out of this, we need to trust each other completely, I asserted, each word carefully wrought from the tension that threaded through us. I don't know if I can, Rachel breathed, looking at me with wide eyes. Neither do I admitted, my voice a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. But if we don't at least try, we're already lost. Tension slipped through the alley like vapor fading, but still tangible. Glaring realities battled within me, tearing at my heart. And before I could fully express my resolve, a series of footsteps echoed ominously from the mouth of the alley, a convergence of shadows and threats closing in. Quick, Mike urged, his voice like a gunshot, and we turned together, fear intertwined with urgency. Just as we began to retreat deeper into the shadows, I was struck by a sudden realization this wasn't just about running away. It was about confronting the very demons that had pushed me into this position, demons I had tried so desperately to outrun. We turned a corner and stumbled out into another street, distant lights twinkling like stars against the night sky. My breath caught as the sense of freedom hung heavy in the air, a lingering tease that might just lead us to safety. But fortune quickly turned sour as I spotted a familiar figure standing by an empty storefront, silhouetted against the stark light. Claire, the voice called, dripping with familiarity. As I edged closer, I froze altogether, the ground falling away beneath me. It was Luke, my Brothera supposed ally at this hour of chaos seeking my attention. I've been looking for you. There's something you need to know before it's too late. My heart hammered against my ribs, fear rushing through me as past grievances crashed into my present. Why, after all this time, was he here? What do you want, Luke? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The truth about everything, he said, stepping closer, his eyes glistening with an earnest tension that wavered in the bright glow of electric light. You need to trust me, Claire. This is bigger than you think. It's about to change everything. And at that moment, right as my mind raced ahead to the implications of his words, I saw them, the figures stalking through the night, their presence heavy as they approached us one step at a time. The familiar, unsettling smile was etched on their faces, their shadows now looming just behind Luke. Panic swept through the air, wrapping its tendrils around my heart. Luke, get away! I screamed as I shoved forward. But there was no mediation left, no safe option to explore, and as the confrontation threatened to unravel into chaos, my soul screamed within me his moment would lead to a sacrifice I could never foresee, one that would cripple and challenge everything I held dear. The truth was waiting to be discovered, but in this moment, all I could grasp around me was fear, reckless, cold, although curiously familiar. Whatever choices lay ahead would not just seal our fates, they would shatter them, for better or worse, unleashing a journey into the heart of darkness, leaving me panting at the edge of a precipice. And as I caught a glimpse of Luke's expression, carefully wrought, yet marred with something closely reminiscent of dread, I realized we were all teetering towards a sacrifice that would redefine our very existence. The chill of the night wrapped around us, each breath drawing in the crisp air tinged with panic. I could hardly process Luke's presence. Emotions crashed together like waves against the jagged cliffs of my past betrayal, confusion, hope. The figures advancing behind him cast long, sinister shadows that swallowed the warmth of the streetlights, their resolve unyielding. Claire. Luke's voice cut through the cacophony of my thoughts, a raw urgency that pulled my eyes back to his. We don't have much time. You have to listen to me. Listen? To you? I struggled to keep my voice steady, even as the panic roared within me like wildfire. You left. Why should I trust you now? I know. His expression shifted, morphing into something softer, laden with a regret that resonated in my fractured heart. And I'm sorry, but they're coming for you. And if we don't move fast, I won't be able to help you, or what? The question hung in the air, daring him to finish. I struggled against the urge to reach out to him, to find comfort in the bond we once shared, which felt unbearably distant now. Before he could respond, the figures drew closer, malicious grins splitting their faces. Time was slipping through my fingers like sand, and all the while, I felt the earth shifting beneath me, a tremor of old heartaches rekindling into something I didn't know how to face. That a scream broke through the tension, spiraling upward into the night. It was Rachel, her eyes wide and terrified, watching the figures with unrestrained fear. "Luke, please. We have to go?" But Luke stood firm, a solid wall against the chaos, eyes locked on mine as if they held an unspoken weight. "The truth, Claire. You have to see it. It's not what you think. I promise I'm here to help. Help?" Anger and hurt twisted inside of me, bruising my heart. "What kind of help is this? You're standing here while they're coming for us. Because I've learned things, Claire. Things that change everything." Luke's voice strained with desperation, and in that moment, I was struck by the sincerity brimming in his gaze. The pounding footsteps behind him grew closer, vibrating through the alley like an impending earthquake, and every heartbeat felt like an eviction notice from the life I had known. "Let's just get out of here," Mike shouted, suddenly bold, his protective instincts pushing forward. "We can figure it out on the way." But as Mike reached to pull me away, I felt a pang of guilt pierce through the ache in my chest. I didn't want to turn my back on Luke. Not like this. Not when the bond of sibling loyalty still flickered beneath all the scars. Before I could respond, the air thickened with the scent of danger, crackling with unresolved tension. One of the figures stepped into the light, a face I recognized all too well, twisted into a mockery of a smile. "Adrian. Well, if it isn't the family reunion I never knew I needed," he taunted, scanning our group with gleeful malice. Luke's expression hardened, resolving into something akin to fury. "Get away from her, Adrian." Fear coursed through my veins, intertwining with the pulsating dread of what Adrian was capable of. This was no longer just a family matter. This was survival. Yet, the battle within me raged fiercer. "Cowed, I trust Luke after all this time? After all the secrets left unspoken? Claire?" Amelia's voice shattered my inner turmoil, grounding me as she emerged from the shadows where I had almost forgotten her. "You need to make a choice." "Choice?" I echoed, despair sinking in like quicksand. "What choice? You're asking me to choose between my family and my friends." "Yes." Amelia stepped closer, her presence somehow both a comfort and an unsettling reminder of the stakes. "But remember, sometimes it's the very ones familiar to us who can lead us astray. And sometimes, they are the ones who help us break free." The room spun, colors melding into a smudged canvas of doubt. Mike grasped my hand firmly, grounding me. Rachel mirrored his express Iona, silent plea capturing the weight of our predicament. I had to decide in an instant, and it felt like diving into an abyss. "Claire." Luke's panic-stricken voice cut through my moment of indecision. "You have to trust me. You can't let them do this." Adrian stepped forward, lights casting long shadows behind him, and I felt the crushing reality of our situation like a vice around my chest. "Choose, Claire. We have all night. But eventually, you will have to make a decision. Who will you protect?" The impending confrontation loomed over us, with betrayal and desperation spiraling into a maelstrom of emotions. I stood teetering above the precipice, my heart pounding, the weight of expectations and fears pressing down until I felt I might crumble beneath it. With a tremor shooting through me, I felt a wave of desperation rush in, a visceral need to protect those I loved from the darkness closing in around us. I opened my mouth to speak, and just as I began, the night erupted with a sharp crack of sound that echoed like a gunshot through the Aaliyah blow that would forever alter the course of our hearts. Suddenly, everything shifted. In that moment between breaths, a twisted act of desperation would set into motion a heartbreaking sacrifice I never anticipated. As I moved, the realization washed over me like cold water. I couldn't save everyone. That I took a step toward Luke just as the figures lunged, signaling the moment where choices would carve the path through our fates. My heart ached for clarity, for resolution. And as the night pulsed with chaos, one agonizing echo ringing in my ears, I braced myself for the inevitable storm that threatened to fracture us all at our core. I stood there, trapped in the chilling air, the weight of my choices pressing heavily against my chest. Time slowed and blurred, the world around me morphing into a hazy canvas of who I had been and what I was willing to sacrifice. With Adrian's cold smirk haunting my periphery and the shadows closing in, I felt the quaking pulse of fear intermingling with a flicker of resolve igniting deep within me. Claire, choose us. Emily's fierce voice cut through the shadows, her presence a fleeting reminder of the hope I desperately clung to. But could the lines of loyalty blur into something irreparable? The truth felt like fogged glass, both beautiful and suffocating, the air filled with the bubbling sensation of impending disaster, and I caught the glint of steel as Adrian's men encroached. Luke's face twisted in desperation, mirroring the turmoil I felt within. Rachel and Mike, with their earnest expressions, pushed toward me, but I could sense the dread rippling beneath layers of resolve. "Luke," I shouted, fighting to hold the wavering strands of our past together. "You said you'd help, but I don't know if I can trust you." The doubt poured from me, a pitiful plea for clarity amidst the chaos erupting at the edges of our fragile assembly. The tight grip of fear clenched at my heart, squeezing tighter with every accusing glance from Adrian. "Claire." Luke's voice was low but fierce, the urgency of the moment latching onto me like a second skin. "This isn't just about us anymore. If you stay here, you're dooming everyone. We must trust each other. You need to believe him, not like them." Chilling laughter slipped from Adrian's throat, biting and malicious. Trust? Such a fragile theme as loyalty crumbles beneath the weight of despair. His words clawed at my insides like ice shards, chilling my resolve even further. "But I suppose family has always been your greatest weakness, hasn't it?" "No," I snapped back, aggression rising against the shadows that whispered their bitter truths. "Family is my strength. And while I may not fully understand your intentions, Luke, I will choose love over fear." The stance I took felt like standing on shifting sands, but it fortified everything I held dear, every bond, every thread of our shared pain solidifying into something tangible. My heart raced as adrenaline surged through me, a relentless determination to protect those in front of me, igniting a fire I had never felt before. "Run," I shouted, voice cracking on the last syllable, finding resolution to close the gap that separated us. Without another thought, I sprinted toward Luke, racing through the swirling chaos. We barreled past Adrian and his men, adrenaline sharpening my reflexes and cutting through the panic clouding my thoughts. Then in a moment of blur and confusion, I caught sight of Amelia closest to the shadows, trapped in an ethereal vortex of helplessness. "Amelia," I called out, instinctively reaching for her. Time was slipping, I could feel it. But could I really save her without endangering myself and everyone I cared for? "Leave her," Luke shouted, his own fear threading through our tenuous connection. "We have to go?" The truth will come later, but the sight of Amelia's eyes opened wide in terror shattered whatever hesitation lingered in my heart. The bittersweet echoes of sacrifice rang too deeply within me. How could I leave her knowing that I had the ability to help? Staring into her eyes, something shifted in me, own final push that could shift the tide toward redemption and forgiveness. "Hold on." I extended my arm, barely catching her wrist, and pulled, feeling her fears entwining with my own. But this wasn't just about my resolve anymore. Even as adrenaline coursed through me, I felt the echo of my father's laughter reach across the time we had lost, a voice that whispered of love and choice. And with that, I was bracing for the storm. Whether it was reckless or bold mattered little. With every ounce of my existence, I chose to leap into the unknown depths of risk to forge my path ahead. Just as we began to surge together, the moment erupted into chaos, a collision of light and dark. Adrian stepped forward, his expression twisting into something that dripped pure malice. "You're making a grave mistake," he hissed, a jeering power backing his words. My heart thundered as shadows spilled into the light, yet a flicker of hope surged in tandem. The following moment felt like an eternity, the air thick with anticipation and despair, boiling into a wrongful parable of sacrifice. And just when I thought I might buckle beneath the pressure, I felt a forceful grip yanking me back. Luke's hand shot out and held me firm. "Don't you dare look back," Luke commanded, his voice deeper now, transformed through sheer determination. As chaos erupted behind us, a bone-chilling noise echoed through the air, the sound of shattered silence breaking like glass. In that instant, I realized we were not only fighting our own demons, but also challenged to create our destinies anew, born from the fragments of the past we shed in pursuit of a brighter truth. Run. The order was clear as the darkness encroached, a legion of histories converging on us. My heart stuttered in my chest, but I didn't look back. And as we raced down the street, through the rising hopes and fears, I understood the blend of feelings crashing against one another. Forgiveness and love had led me here, to this very moment. Adrenaline rushed through me as clarity beckoned with every heartbeat. I had lost so much but gained so much more. The spirit of my father swirled within me, whispering of love's unyielding strength, binding me to the truth of my heart. In that very moment, as shadows intertwined behind us and dawn threatened to break the horizon, I knew that with each choice, I unveiled a piece of my past along with my family's identity. I wouldn't allow the echoes of doubt or fear drive me back into the dark, for within the storm, I saw glimmers of light shimmering through. In a final push toward tenderness and resolution, I gripped Amelia's hand tighter, pulling her closer. With love as my guide, and hope lighting the shadows that danced at the edges of my consciousness, I took that fateful step forward into the arms of my future, uncertain yet beckoning. Because love was the tether that led us through the unknown, a promise that no matter the storm that raged, the heart carried within itself the profound power to forgive and heal, giving life to the stories that would shape us forever. And as I exhaled the last of my fear into the night, I whispered a prayer for survival for all we had lost and all we might find again, together. We surged ahead into a dawn drenched in uncertainty, but in that beautiful moment of connection, I realized that we had already begun to shape our destinies, writing our story anew with every resolute heartbeat.